People pleasing not only can make you sick, it can actually kill you because you're suppressing yourself, your needs. This is totally unnatural. And I believe the only reason people do this is because of unconscious guilt. So on the scale of consciousness mapped out by Dr. David R. Hawkins, guilt is one of the lowest levels of consciousness. It's the closest to death and the furthest away from the truth of who we are. It has the least amount of power in it. And when you hold a lot of guilt in your mind, then you suppress other feelings, other lower negative emotions of anger and shame and pride and just your needs in favor of other people's. Guilt is destructive because the view of oneself from the level of guilt is one of self-hatred. And it's like the least life-affirming emotion. And so it creates stress in the body. Stress hormones are released, adrenaline and cortisol. It desynchronizes the left and right cerebral hemispheres of the brain. So literally your brain is not functioning properly when you're in a state of guilt, when you're living from a place of guilt. And it disrupts the acupuncture meridians. And these are subtle energy channels that run throughout the body. And when they're disrupted, energy doesn't flow properly, doesn't go where it needs to go. And so it limits the body's natural capacity to heal. I believe this all stems from a pattern developed in childhood. So you may have had emotionally immature parents who, to no fault of their own, they were doing the best they could with the level of consciousness that they were at the time, but they may not have been very skilled at dealing with their own emotions. And so they either shamed your feelings or they were just unavailable. They weren't able to hold space for you to work through difficult emotions. And so you internalized that these are not okay to have. And in order to maintain a loving connection with your parents, which is necessary for survival, you learn to suppress them. But of course, emotions keep coming. You can't really control them. And so there comes the guilt of having the feelings, of having needs. So not only did you suppress them, but then there's tremendous fear of what do I do with these? Then there's symptoms that are felt in the body from suppressing these feelings. And I remember as a child becoming a hypochondriac and having anxiety because I was suppressing myself, and it manifested as physical issues. And then I obsessed on them and imagined I had diseases. This was a way to focus my anxiety on something else rather than this nameless fear. I could put a name to it. It was this thing, this illness. And then it was perhaps under my control. And anyway, people take this pattern with them into adulthood. And they act the same way as if they were still a child. They act as if they're powerless and they must suppress themselves in order to survive, in order to keep people around. Whether that's in an intimate partnership or at work. And this is what makes people sick. I just had this experience with my girlfriend. And for a while now, I've been getting this impulse that I felt guilty about, that I may want to make a change to our relationship and transition out of romantic partnership. And finally, I got to the point where it's like, I got to talk about this. I have to express this. And I could feel right before I was going to talk to her all this guilt, all of this fear coming up. I could feel it in my body. It was very overwhelming. But it was such a relief to speak the truth. And actually, it brought us weirdly closer together. because she felt known. She knows me better now. And something that was really cool, she told me she just appreciated that I spoke the truth. It gave her more respect for me, and she said she just wants to know me rather than me showing up to play a role to keep her happy. So actually, people will respect you more. As you become more authentic, you stop people pleasing and you share your truth. The other thing is, I've had this pain issue, and the longer I suppressed this impulse, the more I could feel this. The pain was getting worse, louder. It was almost demanding that I confront this, that I face this within me and stop suppressing myself. So I could feel the pain get really bad right before we spoke, and then afterwards, it was gone. The next day, no more. Or at least very little pain. This is the power our minds have over our health. And what we do, we see stress outside of ourselves, in a relationship, in a partnership, in a job, but it's actually what we're holding inside ourselves. So what you're doing when you stop people pleasing is you get to find out who really wants to get to know the real you and who just wants you to be the same and play a role, probably because it's really convenient for them. That is the gift. And it's freedom. You free yourself up to finally be yourself. And when you tell the truth, you find your courage, but not before. You have to speak to the truth. This is where the courage is found, and courage is what makes us feel alive. It's expansive, and it's health-giving. It's life-affirming. It's much higher up on the scale of consciousness. So the way out is to be courageous, to move through the fear you have, and then to find forgiveness. Forgiveness is the way to release the guilt. You forgive yourself for being a normal human being and having feelings. Forgive your past. You forgive anybody in your life, not making anybody wrong. This is what releases the guilt. And then you can step out slowly out of this pattern. And then live a life that is truly yours, where you don't have to play small and hold everything in, but you're free to express yourself. Oftentimes, it seems that our wants conflict with our needs. So you have a want, let's say, to be in a peaceful relationship and show up in a way that contributes to the harmony within the relationship. And you want to hold on to it. And then there's a need to speak the truth, which you may fear is in conflict with your want. This also often stems from childhood. If you had these caregivers who were emotionally immature, and so when you did express yourself, when you did speak the truth, what did it do? It created conflict. But actually, this is a distorted belief, because in reality, there are many people who will not react that way. And this truth, even if it's a difficult truth, and even if there's emotions, they're felt, they're owned, each person takes responsibility, and actually it brings you closer together. So it's connecting, not separating. But by becoming aware of the guilt we're holding, becoming aware of these patterns, we can break free of them. And break free of people-pleasing and not get sick. And if we do have an illness, it increases the chances of full recovery in a lot of cases. Not everything is, some things are due to genetics, I get that. But I think a lot of cases, our minds are more powerful than we give them credit for. And when we let go of these lower emotions and develop a more positive inner state, health is the natural outcome. So I hope you found that helpful. Have an amazing day. Much love.